We're just going to go over the process for programming the Battlefront controls into the Quadstick controller. So one thing I like to do for programming is actually kind of piggyback off of another profile that's already made that's got similar controls. So Call of Duty, Battlefront, both first-person shooter games, very similar controls. So I'm going to click on this one here. That'll pop me up in this new window. So this is uh, the Google Sheets file of the Call of Duty game. So in order to edit this, I'm going to have to actually make a copy of it because this is a view only file. So I'm going to go up here, click make a copy, and I'm just going to name this Battlefront 2 test. Okay, and that'll just open up in a new window with the new name Battlefront 2 test right up here. One other important thing we want to do is actually change the name here. So we don't want this to be called cod.csv because that'll actually overwrite the cod.csv file in the Quadstick program. So if I went here and if I had another program with this same CSV file downloaded to my Quadstick, it would actually overwrite it because they have the same file name. So I'm going to just change this to front2.csv. That should be fine. This is only on the first page here. I don't have to do this for all pages. So down here are all the profiles within the Battlefront profile. So that's going to be that like quick sip or puff on that side straw on the Quadstick is going to switch me between these smaller profiles within my Battlefront profile. So we don't actually have to edit all the profiles in here. We're actually just going to edit one of the profiles and use that one as our main shooter profile. I usually like to do the right one, and what it means by right is that the Quadstick joystick is controlling the right joystick on the controller. So you can see here, right joy left on the controller is left on the Quadstick, right joy right on the controller is right on the Quadstick, etc. So just the joystick on the Quadstick is that right joystick on the controller. And then the reason I chose this one for doing our first-person shooter profile is because we actually don't need both joysticks to play necessarily. You just by moving the right joystick right and left, you can actually turn your guy right and left as long as he's walking forward. So here, all that we need for that left joystick is just to hold it forward. So left and center puff is gonna make our guy start walking forward, and we actually want this as toggle, because then we won't actually have to keep puffing in there. We'll just have to puff in the left and center once, and then our guy will just start to walk forward, and then we can use the right joystick to turn him left, right, up, down, wherever we need to go. So that's what I like to do for movement. This I found works the best for the first-person shooter games. Everyone's got their own preference. This does take a while to get used to, but I find it's better than having to switch between profiles to go from left joystick to right joystick. This way you can kind of just stay in one profile, and that's just your main profile pretty much the whole game. The only time you'd ever switch to one of these profiles down here, like for the D-pad, is if you're in a menu and you need to navigate the screen, because you can't do that with just the right joystick. So then you'll have to either go to the D-pad or the left joystick for the first-person shooter games. Now we're going to focus on just the other controls in the game. I like to focus on the primary controls first, and then worry about all the additional ones later. Primary, I mean, like, since it's a first-person shooter game, obviously we're going to be shooting, we're going to be aiming, so I'm going to focus on programming those ones first, and then we'll do the other ones after. So left 2 is going to be our aim. I like to put that one in the center. So I'm actually going to put that one as center sip. And then R2 is going to be our shoot. I'm going to put that one as center puff. The reason I put those two in the center is because while you're moving the joystick all around, so the center sip and puff is usually the easiest one to access because that one's this one that's sticking out the furthest, and it's right in the middle, and that's typically where your mouth rests on the quad stick. So those ones are just uh, the quickest to get to. So, and since you utilize them the most and you need to use those the quickest in a first-person shooter game, those are the ones I like to put in that position. The other one I like to put in a spot that's quicker to access is the melee attack for first-person shooter games. So that's R3 here. I'm gonna put that one as the lip. The lip is just the pressure switch underneath the sip and puff on the quad stick. That one's pretty easy to access, just 'cause you can push in with your chin really quick, even if you're moving the joystick on the quad stick. So I got the main attack controls out of the way here. So now let's go into just uh, the X here. So the X in Battlefront is jump. I'm gonna keep that one as right sip. Some of these ones, it's not a huge deal. I usually like to keep it consistent between games, just so whenever I'm programming them, you don't have to relearn what's X in this game, what's circle in this game. I only usually change these ones if I have to, and I need to switch them out for a different control because I need to make that other control quicker to access, or I need it for something else. So circle here, I'm actually going to switch that one to left sip. Once again, not any specific reason for that, just because that's just typically what I have on the other profiles, and it's difficult to try to relearn what all these other ones are going to be on each new game. Square here, I'll do triple puff. And then square is getting in and out of a vehicle, so that's not something I have to access super quick, and I actually needed those, the one I typically do in other games for something else in this profile, so I put that one as triple puff. And then triangle is switching weapons, and I have that one as right and center puff. And then circle, that's actually dodge in the game. I forgot to say that. So that one's used once in a while. It's not used super, not used a lot. So it's not something I need to have right in the middle, like shoot and aim. I usually like to keep these ones the same on everything, no matter what, because it's going to be, once again, it's going to be a pain to try to relearn what start is and the PS4 button or PS3 button is on every single profile. So I usually try my best to keep those the same no matter what. The other controls here, these next ones are going to be kind of the extra controls. They're not super pertinent for playing the game, but they're used occasionally. So like your power-up abilities and grenades and things like that. So like the left bumper is one of the power-ups in Battlefront 2. So I'm going to actually put this one as left puff. The reason I chose that is just because it seemed intuitive that you would do. So left bumper is left puff, just because that just seemed pretty easy to remember. And same with right bumper. I just set that one as right puff. And that's your other special ability. The last one, one for attacks are the middle ability in Battlefront, and that's actually holding down left and right bumper at the same time. So I'm actually going to create a new control for this one here, because I'm already using left and right up here, so I actually have to make one down here, there's actually the same sip and puff for controlling both of these. So they're both going to be normal. And I'm going to set these ones as right and center sip, because this is pretty much all I have left. Okay, and the last one is sprint. So sprint is going to be our that's our L3 here, left 3 is that just holding down that, just pushing down the button on the left joystick. That one I'm going to keep here as a left and center sip. The reason I like to keep that one is because that's actually the inverse of what it is for walking forward. So it's really quick to just do the puff for left and center puff for walking forward, and then going right to the sip for sprinting. So then it's just a quick kind of like 1-2 puff sip to go into a sprint. And I'll just put this one as normal because we don't need that one as toggle. One I will put as toggle though is actually aim. So that's our left 2 here. The reason I want this one as toggle is because for aiming, you typically aim to shoot, so you actually need to have that aim button held down while you're shooting, and you can't be sipping in and puffing at the same time because left 2 is our center sip and R2, our shoot, is our center puff. So we need something that'll actually hold the aim button down for us, which will allow us to switch over and shoot. So this will actually allow us to just sip one time into center control on the quad stick, and that'll just put our guy right into aim mode, and then we can just shoot. So we don't have to worry about trying to sip in and holding that aim button down and shooting at the same time. So that's our loadout here for Battlefront 2. So once again, this is our main profile here, and that's our middle profile. The other ones here aren't used really, except for when we're navigating the menu and things like that. So now we're going to go over the controls on the quad stick for Battlefront 2, which we'll play here in a second. So for our movement, to walk forward, we're going to do that toggle forward. So when you toggle forward, it's just going to hold that left joystick forward on the controls. So the sip and puff for that is going to be left and center puff. So when Robert left and center puffs in, that left joystick will be held up, and then it'll lock, his guy's just going to be walking forward. The right joystick will just be the movement of this joystick on the quad stick. So when you move it in any direction, that's going to be just moving your sights. So when you want to like turn right and turn left, you just move your sights right and left on the quad stick. And then for the other controls, so we have X, which is jump in the game, is going to be right sip. Circle, which is dodge in the game, is going to be left sip. Square, which that's to get in and out of a vehicle, isn't as necessary of a control because it's not something you need to do very quickly. It's just going to be triple puff. That one's not quite as quick to access, but since we don't really need it very fast, that's something we can just program as one of the slower access options on the quad stick. Triangle, which is changing weapon, is right and center puff. Shooting, which is going to be very important. So aiming is going to be center sip, and then shooting is going to be center puff. So that's your L2 and R2. So those are things that you want to access very quickly, so they're right in the middle, something while you're moving and moving the joystick around, something you can access very quickly. So those are very important. Your special abilities, which would be like your grenades or power-ups, your left power-up would be left puff, your right power-up would be right puff, and then the middle power-up would be right and center sip. And then melee, which is also another important one to access quickly, because if there's a guy right in front of you, we want to be able to melee them, is going to be your lip control. So that's something you can also access very quickly on the quad stick.
And then the last one is sprint. So for sprint, we just have left and center sip. We chose that one because when you're walking forward, that's left and center puff. And left and center sip is just the opposite of that, so it's sip, and it's really quick to access from a puff to a sip right there. So then you can just quickly go from walk to sprint right away. So those are the controls. So right now we're gonna get started, and you can kind of see the gameplay.
Before we get started here, I'm going to go over something kind of important. So the profile we went over in the previous video, so that's actually Robert's third profile on the Quadstick. See here, he's on his fourth profile, so he's actually got to switch to his shooter profile, so he's accessing that side tube to go over one profile to the left. The reason he's on the fourth profile right now is because we actually programmed that one as controlling the D-pad for the joystick on the Quadstick. So then he's able to access the menu and pick his character and then switch to his shooter profile when he's ready to start here. So now we're just going to go over some of the basic controls while Robert's playing the game here. So just mostly movement. So see, he's doing the left and center puff at the same time. So what this does is that holds that left joystick forward. So that's going to get his guy moving forward. After this, he doesn't actually have to keep puffing into it. Since it's toggle, it's just going to keep holding it for him until he puffs into it one more time. And actually how he's going to move left and right is actually he's going to move his view, you see, just by moving the joystick on the Quadstick. See, here he's doing the left and center sip, so that's going to actually do that sprint. So now his guy's going to start sprinting. And you see here he's still moving that joystick left and right, so that's actually changing his camera view, but also changing the camera view also changes how your guy turns as well. So you actually don't need that left joystick, right and left, to turn. You guys can do that just by changing your camera view on that right joystick. Here you can see he's doing that center puff. So you see the middle LED is turning red. So that's indicating that he's shooting. So he's just doing the shooting here. And those are the basic controls. Okay, so now we're just going to go over the controls a little bit more in a different loadout. So we did the left and center puff, so that's just going to toggle that left joystick forward. He doesn't have to hold anything on the Quadstick, doesn't have to puff on anything. It's just holding that joystick forward for him, so it's just going to keep moving his guy forward. And he's using that joystick on the Quadstick as the right joystick to just navigate around. Here he's doing a lip, so that's actually the melee attack. And then you see his guy keeps moving here. Because the left joystick's still toggling down, and he's just using that joystick on the Quadstick to change his sight and move. Here, if he wants to stop moving, he's doing another left and center puff, so that's going to toggle off that left joystick, and now he wants to aim, so now he's going to do a center sip, and that's going to actually toggle on aim. He's going to toggle out of it here by doing a center sip again, and if he wants to toggle and move again, he's actually right here going to do another, so he did another left and center puff, and now his guy's moving again. And he's just using that joystick on the Quadstick to change his sight, and then to do his turning and changing his sights up and down. This is really the hardest part to get used to on the Quadstick, because typically on a regular controller you have two joysticks, whereas the Quadstick you only have one. So you have to take advantage of the sip and puffs to map two joysticks onto one controller. So that's all I have for Battlefront on the Quadstick. I'll leave a link to that spreadsheet file so you'll have access to that just in case you want to take a look at it, change anything, modify it, or try and use it with your Quadstick. Keep in mind this even though we went over this on the PlayStation, and the spreadsheet has the PlayStation controls on there, this will work with Xbox as well because that converter piece will convert all those PlayStation commands to Xbox controls. So those will just be converted with that converter piece. So I'll leave a link to that so you'll have access to that.